Hi, this is Pastor Luther of Running to Win, heard daily on Bible School Radio, 91.3 KDKR, Decatur, Dallas, Fort Worth, and on 91.3 KYJC, Commerce.
Portions of KDKR programming do not necessarily reflect the views of this station, its management, or staff.
Prudent Money with Bob Brooks is sponsored by the Prudent Money Foundation on 91.3.
Well, what steps do you take to keep a car for a long time? Today we're going to take a look. Stay tuned for the special Car Corner edition of Prudent Money. Good afternoon, this is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the special Car Corner edition of Prudent Money. Tony Joe's here with me, as he is every Friday, to take your Car Corner questions. If you do have a question, we do have a line open. Would love to hear from you, whatever that you don't have to do. You don't have to ask a question about what we're talking about. You can interrupt that and say, hey, look, I'm having this problem with my car. What do I do? And the guru of all gurus.
Keep in mind also, I'd like to add that this is the Car Corner edition of Prudent Money, but you don't have to necessarily call in about a question with the corner of your car. You could ask a question about the top, the bottom, the sides, anything.
Oh, boy. Okay, so 1-877-913-5357. Why do I believe that this 30 minutes is going to be a long 30 minutes? I don't know. 1-877-913-5357. You know what's interesting, Tony Joe, we talk a lot about electric cars and the new technologies and everything. And the one technology that's just the head scratcher is the self-driving car. And of course, Tesla is the big innovator of that car. And we've always said that the way they go about communicating and marketing that is very problematic. And it appears the U.S. prosecutors, and this is the first I've heard of this. This was actually in a Reuters article. It says U.S. prosecutors focus on securities and wire fraud when it's some of these cases against Tesla. Now we know just through the grapevine, through different special reports and articles written, that the government has taken care of Elon Musk and that company for a long time, because they look at Tesla as a way to make their vision happen,
promote their green energy,
even as delusional
agenda. Right.
as that is. And so it makes you wonder if you're kind of starting to get the feeling now that things don't look as bright as they do. Maybe the government's looking for a different partner or whatnot, because this is a. Let me read this story to you here real quick, Tony Joe. Okay. A guy was driving a Tesla, had the autopilot on.
Okay.
And struck a motorcyclist and killed him.
Okay.
And this the Washington State Patrol arrested this guy.
Now, you're saying this was on autopilot?
On autopilot.
So he may have been doing distracted or something.
He was
okay.
Doing some of his phone.
Okay.
Now, how a police officer could figure all this out, that he was driving at a certain speed, looking at his phone, and he had the autopilot on. Mm-hmm. But anyway, he did.
Oh, we can talk about that sometime, but that's very easy to determine.
Oh, it is? Okay. Mm-hmm. So he gets charged with vehicular homicide.
Okay.
And so the question is, and we've talked about this a lot, is the one thing that, besides the fact that Elon Musk will make statements about the self-driving car that really are kind of irresponsible, but you've got a button that you can push, I'm assuming, that says autopilot. It does say autopilot on it, and they call it the autopilot system. That one step could end up leading to a lot of trouble if a prosecutor used that in a case. Wouldn't you think so? Because it's misleading.
Right. I would think so. And let me tell you why I would think so. Because if you read the fine print, which nobody's going to, you will discover that autopilot feature is not completely autonomous and you don't have to pay attention. You're always the human guard, so to speak. You always have to be on guard, and that's why autopilot is misleading, like you said. Let me explain why. Because most of the time you think autopilot, it's safe for you to just maybe read your phone or,
something very innocent.
Yeah.
You're not taking a nap.
Because you think autopilot means autopilot like on an airplane. Okay, but
right.
Now, here's the part that gets confusing. It is not. It never was. But you don't know that. You think that because it says autopilot. It's misleading. But if you read the contract and really read all the fine print, somewhere in there you're going to find out, and this is probably why he will be under prosecution and possibly convicted of vehicular manslaughter or homicide, whatever it was, because he's supposed to know that, Bob. He was supposed to know that. If I had to read the fine print on all the contracts that I signed in my lifetime and found out the hard way that, it was in the fine print, you were supposed to know that. I mean, it is misleading. It is kind of trickery. And I will say from my own experience that I happen to know that techies nothing against Elon Musk personally, but techie people who are working and doing research and development on groundbreaking new discoveries, charting new territory that's never been explored before, like driverless cars and things. They push the envelope. They push right to the edge of the envelope. They don't take as much safety precaution and prudent judgment as I would like, or that I think a lot of people would like. They push the envelope because they're in a race to get there first. So this autopilot, the problems that have come up in the past with it, and this is just another one, it is a misleading term. It is a very misleading thought to that most people are not going to realize until it's too late, that even though, and this is why I don't like autopilot, I don't like self-driving cars, it's because you have to pay attention every minute to be the human override in case of an emergency. Now, think about that. If you've got to be on guard all the time, why don't you just drive the car? Because you cannot be constantly on guard and then be asked to make a split-second decision at the last minute.
Right.
You're not going to be ready. I liken it to a police officer's lifestyle. Most of their career, 99% of their career, is boring police stops, traffic stops and something. And then if they ever find themselves in that situation, they're asked to make a split-second decision on a life or death, pulling their weapon. And so it's very, very difficult. But they're trained to do that. The human being driving the Tesla, misled by the fact that he thinks that's an autopilot, means he can just never mind and just watch a movie or something, that's misleading. And he's not trained for that. So that's my big issue with self-driving. And keep in mind, Tesla is not the only car company that's doing research and development into the self-driving or the completely autonomous mode.
You know, it's interesting. This article says that a trooper cited the driver's admitted inattention to driving while on autopilot mode, putting trust in the machine to drive for him. Then it says the Washington State, a driver remains, in quotes, responsible for the safe and legal operation of that vehicle, regardless of its technological capabilities. Mm-hmm. So it makes you, the question is...
I don't blame the guy. Just let me point out, when he told the police officer, I didn't think I had to worry about it, it was on autopilot. You see, that's his thought, is it's on autopilot. He is misled into thinking that is automatically going to take care of any event that comes up, and it's not. And if you really read the fine print, which on page 300, down on paragraph 9, it says you're responsible at all times for the safe operation of that vehicle. Well, here's my point. If you've got to be on the Ready 5 every minute, what enjoyment could you have by putting it on autopilot?
Yeah.
You can't look away. You still got to keep watching everything. Why don't you just drive the car? But then I'm old school, and my kids tell me that all the time.
Yeah, it makes you at the end of the day say that they go through with this trial and the charge.
Mm-hmm.
Who is really responsible at the end of the day?
Who's really responsible would be Tesla, the company. Who's going to be convicted of it is the individual driver that was behind the wheel, thinking that autopilot meant that it was going to solve every problem.
But yet, the article, once again, this is a Reuters article, says that they have investigated hundreds upon hundreds of crashes.
Do you remember, I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but do you remember a couple of years ago, you and I had the same discussion about a Google driverless car, and the girl was caught because there was a video monitor on her all the time. She was the human override, doing an 8-hour shift, testing the Google car driving in traffic. And some girl in a bicycle was walking her bike across the street.
Right, I remember that.
And the car hit and killed her. And at the exact moment, you see the girl on her phone, playing a game on her phone. See, and I don't blame anybody. It's not my place to judge. But I will say that human nature tells me after 6 or 7 hours of being the quote-unquote human override, it's going to take a minute to be responsive. You can't just be on alert every second. It would be nice. That's what she was hired to do. But human nature doesn't allow us to be that on alert every second for the full 8 hours when you're not doing anything. The car's driving itself.
Yeah, and that's on a good day.
And that's what will happen with most people in the public when they're released. That's what I try to explain to people.
This is Bob Brooks. You are listening to the special Car Corner edition of Prudent Money. 1-877-913-5357. Up against the break. Stick around. We'll be right back. Hello, this is Bob Brooks. Proverbs 22:3 and Proverbs 27:12 are the exact same verse word for word. I call them the stewardship verses of risk. A prudent person foresees danger and takes precautions. The simpleton goes blindly on and suffers the consequences. On the Prudent Money Radio Show, we teach about risk, how to identify it, how to figure it out, and what to do about it. We believe that to be a prudent steward, you have to be a good risk manager. Listen to the Prudent Money Radio Show on Bible School Radio 91.3. Prudent Money, home of the modern-day steward movement.
Luck and coincidence are popular terms, but they're not terms we'll find in the Bible. Learn how God's providential grace deters or sees us through disaster, and learn how David was protected even when his faith gave way to fear. Join us this week on Truth for Life with Alistair Begg.
Weekdays at 5:30 a.m. here on 91.3 KDKR.
When people talk about God, we often try to explain him in a way that fits our own ideas and perceptions. But God is a holy God and a living God, and he speaks for himself in his word. I'm John Monroe. Monday on The Verdict, we're in the book of Romans learning about the important subject of the wrath of God. Monday on The Verdict.
The Verdict, weekday mornings at 10:30 here on Bible School Radio, KDKR.
This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to this special Car Corner edition of Prudent Money. 1-877-913-5357. I do have a line open. We'd love to hear from you. And Tony Joe. Well, Tony, did you have something to say, Tony Joe? Oh, it would be helpful if I
Not talking. Not talking till the knob is turned up. I would like to say it's Mother's Day weekend. And I would like to say Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there, because they don't get acknowledged enough, in my opinion. People like your wife, Sherry, Happy Mother's Day to everybody. And have a safe holiday. Enjoy yourselves. And my advice is, from most of the mothers I've ever talked to, is they don't want anything necessarily. Just leave them alone. That's it for the whole day. Don't make a mess in the house. If you make a mess, clean it up. Just don't make any more work for them. Just leave them alone. Let them have a day to themselves. And one more thing I would like to say about that. To my kids out there, who probably aren't listening anyway, but in case they are, remember your algebra when it comes to Mother's Day. Because whatever you get for your mom, Father's Day is next month. So I want something equal to or greater than. Whatever.
I'm speechless.
That's my message to
so heartwarming.
Mother's Day message, yes.
So heartwarming. 1-877-913-5357. I do have a line open. Let's talk a little bit about, I came to you a couple months ago and said, Tony, Joe, my tires I still think they got a good bit of rubber left on them and they're in good shape. I'm a little concerned that they're not going to pass inspection. So I went to one of the places I always go to, and sure enough, he told me straight up, he goes, they're not going to pass. Went to another place, they passed it. It was no big deal. But I got to thinking that if this was a year later, the tires would not matter. And I think it'd be a good idea to remind people, listeners, there's a big change coming up. It makes no sense. At least I can't make any sense out of it. But bald tires would not get in the way of you getting an approval for inspection.
Right. Well, the way I understand it, and this is the information that I have at this time, so let me make that clear. The way I understand it, in 2025, you will no longer need the safety portion of the vehicle inspection here in Texas. Now, what does that mean? Well, when you go to get an inspection and you're waiting, and the guy's out there doing things with your car, and then finally comes in and says, all right, $25.50, it's ready, you passed. What you may not know is you're getting a two-part inspection. You're getting what we call the safety portion of the vehicle inspection. That's the tires, the headlights, taillights, the horn, the wipers. Everything's got to work, safety-wise. It involves safety, the safe operating of the vehicle. Then you have Part B, which is the inspection of the emission system. That is, the check engine light can't be on. You can't have any codes in the computer that are significant to any air pollution standards of any kind, and that involves every code that could be in there. So my understanding is in 2025, Bob, this is how it's going to work. You no longer need the safety portion of the vehicle inspection. You will only have to qualify with the emissions portion. That is, the pollution department, the part that pollutes out the tailpipe. No check engine light, no codes in there, everything's cool. You now get a safety inspection for $15.50. However, you could have 4 bald tires, no wiper blades, and 1 broken headlight and 2 broken taillights, and they're still going to pass it because you don't have to qualify for any of the safety stuff anymore. The price of the inspection is going to go down to $15.50. However, that extra $10 that you think you saved is going to be added on to the cost of the license plate renewal when, you have a safety inspection first. Then you can do it online or you can go to the motor vehicle department, but then you have to have your plates renewed. So you're going to pay the extra money on the license plate renewal. So you're not really saving any money, but you're losing what, in my opinion, is the ability for you to be safe. Your car may be okay. You may say, well, I'm not going to, I can see those tires. What about the people that don't? You're going to be on the road with them. Okay?
Right.
Now you're going to be driving around with cars that are not safe to drive on the highway with other vehicles. Thus, they call it safety inspection. But they're doing away with that portion. So it makes no sense. It almost seems incredibly ridiculous. But that is my understanding on this day of this year Unless something changes, this is the way I understand that it's going to be.
Yeah, and that's just Texas.
Well, the state of Texas, yes.
State of Texas.
Well, don't forget, Bob, there's several states that, like, I think Oklahoma, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think they even require a safety inspection.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Some states do not have any vehicle state inspection programs at all.
Personally, I think it makes sense. I wonder what my wife wants. Phone ringing during the program. Go figure.
You'd think she'd be listening. So, look, I know what you're saying. You think it's a good idea to have an inspection program.
Sure.
So do I. But if you're going to have one...
Yeah, have it.
Why would you do away with the safety portion? Well, I'm sure it involves money, Bob. I'm sure... For instance, I mean, it's been years since I was a vehicle inspector, okay? But I used to do state inspections, and I was an inspection, had to have a license, and I happened...
How old were you when you were doing that?
I was 18.
Yeah, I figured you were
when
young.
I got my... Yeah. And the guy and the troopers didn't really trust me. They thought I was too young. They didn't really... I was a little questionable.
They could see you now.
But anyway, I did happen to know through all the rules and regulations that funds the State Highway Patrol pension.
Oh, okay.
So I'm sure this part that you got to qualify for is still got to have money for the pension fund. I'm sure that's what it is.
So they added.
But why would you do away with that part and then not do away with? In other words, you're not going to be polluting right up to the point of impact. That's the way I look at it. You know, you can crash because your tires are bald and you hydroplaned on the highway, but at least you won't be polluting while you're doing it.
Yeah, it just leaves you scratching your head.
Yeah, I don't understand it, and if anybody has any input on that or any thoughts about that, feel free to call in anytime.
How much do they make, do you think, a gas station makes doing an inspection? $10?
I used to know, and I don't now. I think $7 or $8 for every inspection goes to the shop. I think. I could be wrong. It could be $10.
You got to think that they won't change that, because if they change that, they'll have a real problem on their hands, right?
Well, I don't know.
Because you got to have gas stations that are going to opt in to do that.
Well, I don't know. You're not going to have to do the safety portion, which takes a little bit of time and effort.
Mm-hmm.
So, were they going to get compensated for it or not?
Yeah,
because
that makes sense. 1-877-913-5357. Okay, let's talk a little bit about. Been a lot, not so much here in the Metroplex, but there's been heavy dose of tornadoes this storm season. I want to ask you what you would do with this. Everybody's got their phone out and they're videoing if they're near a tornado, and it's amazing how a person will sit there just mesmerized by this awesome event of nature, heading his way, and his family's yelling at him, and he goes, "No, I can't believe what I'm seeing."
Daddy, come in the house.
But so they're probably going to be okay because they have shelter. But the videos of you'll see people in a car, and they're the same thing. They've got their camera out, they're taping it, and so what would you do, Tony Joe? You probably wouldn't hang around, and in fact, I don't even know if your cell phone does videotape anything.
I don't know either. I've never tried. I'm sure it doesn't.
Yeah, it's just a side note. Anyway, it would seem to me that you would turn the car, because this couple are bickering back and forth while this massive tornado is out there, which direction it was coming. And so, you can't pull over and ask. You got to make a decision. But wouldn't you just turn around and go the other way?
Well, common sense would lead you to believe that. However, let me just say, not all cases, that's the smart thing to do. If you can't tell, let's say the tornado is heading directly for you, you can't tell if it's going north, south, east, or west, because it's in a direct line of your vision. And all you can do is watch it and you'll see the flying debris and so forth, but you won't really know that it's creeping your way, and it could be traveling at a high rate of speed. Being in a car is the worst thing you could possibly ever do during a tornado. What would I do? Yeah, if you're asking me, I guess I would back up, try to establish which way it's going, and go the other way. But you can't always depend on that either. Tornadoes change directions in a flash of a minute. They can go, Bob, it's unreal how they can track from one direction, the other, turn left. It's a very hard question to answer. But
Yep.
Next week, there's something I'd like to say about being in a car with a tornado.
This is Bob Brooks. If you got a question for me, please go to the website at prudentmoney.com and send it in, because we are all out of time. Till we do meet again next time, keep the faith and have a great rest of the day.
That's all the time we have for today. Questions or comments for Bob, or to find out more great information like what you've just heard, visit www.prudentmoney.com. Be sure to join Bob Brooks again for the next edition of Prudent Money.